You may begin now.
Good morning. I'm Carolyn Cox. This is the October 26th meeting of the Lacey Land Use and Environment Committee. May I have a motion to approve our agenda for today?
Move to approve the agenda as published.
I second it.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All righty. Our lone agenda item is a big one today, though. We have Rick Walk, our Community and Economic Development Director, who's going to give us an update on land use development.
You're muted.
Someday we won't have to use those words anymore.
I'm glad it's you and not me for a change.
So thank you. And yes, this morning we're going to give a land use update. And again, I think the last land use committee, and we have given some presentations to the council at work sessions on development activity and development updates, but we're continually looking to refine the presentation materials and give the council more information as part of our initiative to answer some of the council's and questions and desires to get a little better understanding of what's going on and where in the development community. So today we're going to go a little more detail than what I presented in the last couple of months. We're going to go through all the various projects that are breaking ground today through a story map feature that will actually show where they are in the community, as well as a little bit of a site plan. And then we're also going to go into what are those development projects that are in the works of going through the land use permitting processes. And this is the part I need to caution the council committee as well. Those projects that are under construction that we'll go through, we can go into a lot of detail if the council has, council members of the committee has questions. But when we get into the ones that are in the land use processes, because the city council is still involved in the land use decisions, we're going to have to keep it at a very broad level. This is purely just to provide you information of the type of project and somewhat where it's located in the community, so you have a little better context, so that if people are asking council members questions about a project, that you can one, know what it is and not be surprised, and two, direct them to the appropriate people. And so providing the other thing we're going to talk about a little bit, and this is some of the questions that's come out of council conversations in the past as well, is because we had a lot of development activity, especially in multifamily. And just to go through a little bit of numbers, number of multifamily units that have been constructed or being constructed right now or in the pipeline since 2015, total about 4,296 units. That comprises of about 24 different projects. And so currently we have under construction in the community about 6 projects totaling around 928 or so units. And we have in the pipeline another 1,500 units representing about 7 projects. That's pipeline means that they're in the pre-submission stage, land use application stage, or in the civil review stage and haven't yet broken ground. And so there has been a big chunk of multifamily and transition to multifamily construction. And that coincides with the reduction of single family development as we've seen our subdivisions and plats start to be built out and the remaining land suitable for single family subdivisions being exhausted. So we're seeing that shift more infill and vertical. I think it was Deputy Mayor at a past work session that when we talked about doing a multifamily update, they wanted to have some information related to what the cost is and how many of those were low income units. And so in this presentation, there will be indication of cost between 2015 and 2020. But in terms of low income units built by the private sector through this, these 4,200 or so, or 4,300 units have been constructed since 2015, about 6% have been developed as low income units. And that 6% represents about 251 units. 241 units were built for senior low income housing by the Reserve at Lacey, there at the old Albertson site, the corner of Pacific and Carpenter Road. And the other 10 units were a product of the old Rancho Motel property. It's now Gateway Multifamily. As part of their being able to go extra density, they're providing 10% of their 96 units as low income. So that's additional 10. So that gives you a kind of a context of the market forces that are at play with when you deal with land price, labor, materials, and market. that we're seeing costs going up, and there's not a lot of that private sector focusing in on the lower income type units. So with that as an intro, I now want to introduce Grant Beck. Grant Beck has just joined the city of Lacey about a month and a half ago in our department as our Planning and Development Services Manager. So we're really excited to have Grant with us. Grant's the previous 20 years, he was the planning director with the city of Yelm, and he brings with him a vast knowledge of land use and planning and environmental work that he has built up over time. And we're really excited him to join our team. Grant is going to go through the presentation, and then also we have with us, we have Reese Fant, our assistant planner, who's one of our current planning members, Samara Seymour, our senior planner, and Sarah Schilling, also our senior planner, all represent our current planning team, and they all are here to help with the presentation, answer specific questions, as they are the project, in essence, the project manager for each one of these developments, and facilitate it through the process in coordination with not only our internal departments for plan review and permitting, but external agencies. And they also are the point person for all the applicant inquiries, as well as citizen inquiries and complaints and responses. So they have a lot of work that they do with just a strong 3-member team, but they do a fantastic job. And so they're here to provide some of that information as well to help supplement the application. So with that, if there aren't any other questions, if there aren't any questions at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Grant to share a screen, and he's going to go through the presentation. It's a little different format, and it's going to be a story map format, but I think you'll be pleased with what it comes out as a visual. So with that, I'll turn over to Grant.
Thank you, sir. First of all, it's just a pleasure to be here and work with Rick and his team. I will let you know that from an outside perspective or a new perspective, and you all know this because you worked with them for years, but the entire department is just full of rock stars, and particularly the current planners. And we gave this update to the Planning Commission last week, and I think it's important because all the work that Ryan and Jessica have been doing on putting the policies in place for kind of the new urbanism that Lacey represents is, this is where the rubber meets the road, and you see it on the ground. And there's a lot of exciting stuff going on that we're going to update you about today. So any questions, just stop me along the way, and I will turn it over to the correct person who can bail me out on the specific questions, because it's all still a little new to me. So I wanted to start with just kind of a snapshot of where we are year to date with some of our building permit activity. And you've seen a little bit of this probably in some more detail from the budget updates that Troy Wu and the city manager have been presenting. But so far year to date, we've issued, and this is at the end of September, we've issued 143 new housing starts, and that includes ADUs. And multifamily, we've done a number of buildings that include 184 new housing apartment units. And that's out the door. The building permits are issued, and now it's in some form of construction. And as you've seen in the budget stuff, and Rick alluded to, we're seeing a shift from single-family dwelling over to multifamily dwelling as the single-family zoning areas are starting to fill up. So we anticipate this shift continuing and getting more strong in the future as well. With all that additional availability, we did take a look, and Rick alluded to this too. The average, we took a look at historic values of housing units. Back in 2015, you could rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Lacey for just over $1,000. In 2021, it's just under $1,900. So even with all these new units coming online and being built, that's just a piece of the affordable housing puzzle, is the new housing stock, the additional growth. For single family dwelling, the median sale price in 2015 was $270,000, and this year it's $480,000. So, and again, with a significant growth rate over the past 15, 20 years. And we're going to be using that as kind of a snapshot of point in time and something to keep an eye on as we move towards the implementation phase of the housing action plan, and just see, again, stock is one piece of this puzzle, but we'll be tracking this to see what other things that we implement, how that changes as we move forward. So the different types of building activity, and this again is out the door, issued permits at the end of September. Got 74 new single-family dwellings, 4 accessory dwelling units, 2 fourplexes and 9 apartment buildings, and a bunch of commercial and industrial buildings. We're also starting to put kind of an anticipated, the city manager talked quite a bit about property taxes and explained how they work and how new housing, new construction doesn't factor into that lid. That's on top of everything. So moving forward, when these are all built, we expect the new single-family dwellings built this year, or permitted this year, to bring in about $19,000 a year in property tax revenue to the city of Lacey. That's using the existing rates and everything. That'll be a little different as we move forward, but that's what it would be today. The multifamily buildings would generate just over $18,000, and the commercial and industrial is almost $50,000. So just kind of a snapshot of how the finance part, the funding part, fits together. So now to the fun part where we get to show off some projects, and you've seen a couple of these as part of the budget presentations again. The first is the landing. This is at the corner of Pacific and Slater Kinney. It's a redevelopment of an existing site, and I think that says a lot about kind of the maturity of development in Lacey, to the point where we are seeing some redevelopment now and not just greenfield development. So we're excited about this from that standpoint. Just some elevations of what the site might look like. This is the site right on the corner where, because I've lived in Lacey before I moved away and came back, but the used bookstore, that's my way of figuring out where things are. So this is where the used bookstore used to be. The 6th Avenue apartments we're real excited about as well. This is under construction right now. It's right on 6th Avenue. This is a 4-story, 151 unit mixed use development with retail on the bottom. Tap room. Any new urbanism development has to have a tap room in it, or a brewery. The thing that we're excited about on this one is it's really the first residential project in the Midtown district since 2008 or 2009, somewhere in there. And it's the first residential project that we reviewed under the Woodland District form-based code. Then we are getting some single-family dwelling subdivisions as well. Not as many as in the past, but they're out there. The Bradley Park subdivision, and pardon me, there's no good renderings of a single-family dwelling plat, a subdivision. It's just kind of flat. It's an 80 lot subdivision between 6th and 15th, just north of North Thurston. It's on a 15-acre parcel of property, and about 3.5 acres down below here are reserved for future development. And this is was Reese's favorite project in his time in Lacey, I think. It's the redevelopment of the old Shopco building into a home and garden store, Coastal Farm and Ranch. They're also adding some outdoor storage and display space. And this is kind of exciting because it is the redevelopment of an empty building. So getting somebody in there is important, even though it didn't probably have any really interesting land use issues that had to be solved. But it is exciting for the reuse of a building. And there's a lot going out on Carpenter Road. This is the first up towards Martin Way. The Serenity apartment homes. It's an 81 unit multifamily development, and with a ground floor coffee shop. If you can't have a tap room, you need to have a coffee shop. Interesting, this is our first with live work units, which are fairly new and approved under the building codes, and we haven't had any in Lacey yet, so this will be the first ones, but they're basically a living unit with an attached office space that can be used, or retail, that's separate but still connected to the living unit, so you can do everything right there in one space. There's a few going in Olympia right now, and we're right behind them with this. It'll be interesting to see how popular these are, especially with the pandemic and remote work becoming more useful now. And then out to the north side of the highway, another multifamily development. This is a 183 unit apartment complex in 12 buildings. It's not super different or nothing super exciting about it, but they did do a planned residential development that allowed them a density bonus for providing additional open space for the residents within the development. So this is, I think they are breaking ground this week or last and getting started on it right now. And also up in that same area on Marvin Road is the Olympia Behavioral Health Facility. This is an 85 bed behavioral health hospital, which is when I think this was part of the budget presentations as well. But healthcare is a growing employment trend in the city, and this will extend that economic baseline as well. The interesting thing with this project is it's on this site, which is heavily impacted by wetlands, including a national heritage wetland, which they were able to entirely avoid any impacts to. So they protected a wetland complex as well as providing a fairly large facility for the community. And then this one fits well. I think this is an indicator of kind of the synergy that may be happening out in the warehouse district. Tech Equipment is a truck dealership, but not as the city manager said, it's not for the Ford F-150s. This is for the big boy trucks. It's a dealership and a service facility, 2 buildings, 60,000 square feet, a little over, including outdoor showroom, a pavilion, truck display, and staging areas. It's on this site here, and they're actually only on the north portion of the site, which means this lower portion is available for future development as well. So we'll see something else out there at some point. But we're kind of excited about that one. It should be kind of fun. And as the city manager stated, it's a beautiful facility. And then NC Machinery is also another one of those kind of synergy things out in that area. It's a 40,000 square foot building for the sales, rental, and service of heavy equipment. And they also followed our design guidelines, so it doesn't look like just a big box. And these guys aren't in design review yet, so we don't have any pretty pictures, but out on the corner of Ho and Martin Way is MHK Mixed Use Development. It's a 2-story, 18,000 square foot mixed use building, and that's mixed use with office and retail space mixed in. So this is kind of finishing off the Talon Lane commercial strip there. So that's be a nice frame for that corner. And then finally, on the ones that are kind of out there right now, the Martin Way mixed use development. It's a 5-story mixed use building with ground floor retail and 96 dwelling units. And they were, it's on this little triangle piece. So challenging piece, and they've got some slope there as well. So they really worked with the site and our design guidelines to actually provide some increased base densities through additional amenities that they provided on site by some site design issues that they went out of their way on, providing some additional electric vehicle charging stations. Is that right, Reese?
Yeah, so they incorporated quite a bit of community assets to allow for that bonus. So the use of high efficiency ductless heat pumps, rooftop solar, electric bicycle or scooter for shared within the community there that'll live within it. Vehicle charging stations for commercial and residential customers. They're going to use locally sourced materials whenever feasible. They're going to construct it to a minimum of LEED silver or equivalent. And then they've incorporated their stormwater with low impact development techniques using kind of the current wetlands, bioswales, and any kind of previous surfacing on that site.
So that's the end of the kind of the fun stuff that's going on out there right now. Samra, Sarah, anything I missed on any of your projects? Nope. Any questions on that part of it? Okay. So moving on to some of the projects that are currently in review, and so
Grant, Deputy Mayor, do you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mouse to unmute it. So quick, just when you talked, the first few slides, you talked about an ADU, 4 ADUs. Are they, do you know, are they situated in a general area or spread out through the city, or I'm just curious because it's really nice to see people taking advantage of ADUs.
It is, and I have it. I'll try to look with where the dots are and get back to you on that real quickly before the end of the session. But just kind of tangentially too, as I did the research for that growth pattern, we're getting more and more every year. So that is a housing option that's starting to be taken advantage of.
And then one other quick question. So when you talk about revenue coming in from that, is that onto the property tax on the ADU homeowner, that person, or the landlord that owns the ADU?
That would always be the property owner who pays the property tax. So both in that situation and the multifamily.
Okay, that's good. I assumed that was so, but I wanted to double check. Thank you.
And just a quick side note, as the ADU, pre-approved ADU program that council approved as part of our housing strategy, we just had our first ADU that was built under those plans completed. And so we have our first project that's gone start to finish and built. And don't know if it's occupied yet, but it's I just want to put that little tidbit in there for you.
Great, thank you.
And the developer of that was so excited that they sent us all the great pictures of what it looks like inside and out and everything they're doing. So it was kind of cool to see that kind of excitement about it.
Great.
What part of town is that in?
I'm not sure.
I can't recall. I'll have to probably get back to it, but I believe it's in the south along College Street area of town, but I have to go back and look what neighborhood it's in.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so the projects under review come with the caveat. This is going to be a real high level. There's nothing that I'm going to talk about that's not on the website already as part of the applications and stuff, because you are in the review process, so we can't get into any details or talk about it too much. But I did want to give you an overview of what's in the pipeline currently, which includes a bunch of multifamily again and some interesting commercial. So with that disclaimer, we'll dive right in. The first couple, I'm sure you've heard about these. The Hicks Lake apartment complex. There's two separate applications out on Hicks Lake. The first is for 178 unit multifamily complex. It includes a bunch of amenities for the residents: a sport court, rec building, swimming pool, a community dock. This one right now is on hold for additional information regarding stormwater. And with both of these properties, the soils are different enough that we typically see in Lacey, because of the relationship to the lake and the different soils, that stormwater is an issue for both of those projects. So Public Works is doing their due diligence and asked for additional information about how that stormwater would be dealt with in an environmentally safe fashion. So that is on hold for stormwater at this point. The next one down is the Gateway at Hicks Lake. It's a little bit more of a traditional apartment complex, and more buildings, larger buildings. It's 132 units. It also has a rec building, a pool, and access to the lake, obviously. It's on hold for a couple things. Revised site plan. This is preliminary. Some of these things are being moved back away from the shoreline to provide additional protections, and additional water information regarding the stormwater system and traffic for this one. So I don't expect those to be heard by the hearing examiner probably this year, I would expect. So depending on how quickly they get us the information. This one is out on Willamette, Marvin, and Hogan Bay Road, and it's a mixed-use development. It's got kind of on this side of the property, it's 350 apartment units with a little bit of ground floor retail on one of the corners of the buildings, and then the rest of it is kind of a recreational emphasized commercial development. They're proposing a pickleball complex with indoor and outdoor, and a restaurant, a couple other retail pads around the perimeter. This would be the pickleball area right up here, and a coffee shop. So that's under review right now. We just got the application in and are working with them to complete it and continue the process. And then out on the Meridian Campus, we've got a proposal for a 4,000 square foot neighborhood market with 5,000 square feet of food service or retail with a second floor office space, as well, and a gas island with four pumps. Our reviews, and we actually required additional information from the applicant on this to make sure that it meets our neighborhood commercial zoning district and stays within the size and scale of that district. So we requested that, and then we'll be focusing on design review and traffic impacts. And they just completed everything. It's still on hold at this point for revised site plan, and then we'll be scheduling a public hearing before the hearing examiner on it.
Can you tell me or define neighborhood market?
Convenience store. I think they're, what they're proposing, that's part of what we're looking at, whether it's like a fresh produce and that kind of good, like a little Sprouts, or more of a convenience store. We don't know at this point. We've asked for additional information on that.
Gotcha.
Again, to try to make sure that it fits in with the neighborhood character and meets the conditional use criteria. So we're still waiting for information from them on that.
There's just been so much clamor for a grocery store up there that perked my interest.
Yeah.
And a full-fledged grocery store would probably be out of scale for a neighborhood
Yes.
commercial zone to be located elsewhere in some of the community commercial or Hawkesbury Business District. But this is more of the neighborhood commercial that's served the immediate area and a little bit larger piece. So,
Right.
And it's also tied to the Meridian Campus master plan, and that also creates some specification on what the style and use of that type of specific designated community or commercial is to serve.
Yep.
Understood. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right, then we've got a couple townhouse developments in there. I'll just pop back and forth here because they look a lot the same because they're by the same developer. There are two townhouses. So they're the Campus Reserve on this side of the road. is 39 townhomes. They're 3 stories tall in 7 building clusters. And we've just begun the review process on that. So Sarah's been, has it out for internal comment, and we're starting to take a look at, make sure it fits in with all of our design guidelines and rules. And then right across the street is 28 3-story townhomes in 5 building clusters. And looks a lot the same because it's the same developer. So that's all the kind of the fun stuff in review. And I use fun fairly loosely sometimes. But I would like to just kind of end where I started and just send out a huge thanks to the people who make sure that the council's vision is articulated in the comp plan, the design guidelines, all the great long-range policies we have meet those standards. And that's, you know, the current planning team you've got here, but it's also the Wade's building and fire team, the building inspectors, the plan reviewers, and the point of the spear, Cindy and Leah out at the front of the counter, who are the first people everybody sees, and do a great job of making sure that our customer service standards are high. And I could throw in here as well Tom Stiles and his development review team in the Public Works Department. We work real closely with them because all of this is a team sport, and no one person can know everything start to finish on these development projects. So it's a huge, as Rick said, kind of a project management function that the current planners work with. So that's what I had, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
It's good to see that none of you are busy at all.
Absolutely.
This is a good busy.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
So I don't have any questions, but I do want to relay something that we just had a deck built by West Coast Improvement, I think, of whatever. And they said that the community services people were just so good to work with that he never has any trouble. And Ty as well and stuff. He said they're just excellent. And I wanted to pass that on because you don't ever get complimented for all the good work you do. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, like I said, it's a great team, and it is a team sport. So thank you. And I'm sure that they didn't deal directly with Rick, though. That would have kind of screwed things up. But right. Well, thank you all.
Welcome to the team, Grant.
Thank you.
Yeah, really glad you're here. I have one question that has come up a lot in Northeast Lacey, and I'm sure you're aware, you know, the concerns about the tree canopy there and all the trees coming down. And one question I had was on the site that is going to have pickleball there. Do we work with people who are proposing to develop land, and if they have something like that, and there's a big stand of trees on one part of the property, and other parts of the property aren't quite so populated with trees, to try to guide the activity where you would have to cut fewer trees. In other words, don't mow down a whole bunch of trees to put in a pickleball court when there may be.
Absolutely, that's part of the requirements, you know, in the current code, to be sensitive to what you're cutting down, and if you have to replace it at a certain ratio and provide additional tree and landscaping. And as well, we'll be, you know, looking at the latest update to the urban forestry management plan to see if we need to change those regulations or add to them in the future to make sure that we're still doing on the ground, like I said, what the vision is from those plans that are adopted by the council. So it's planning is kind of a constant churn. You know, you got to visit the policies, establish the policies, and then make sure the development regulations are doing what they need to do to enforce those policies. So, and then start over again. So.
If I can add on to it, just on the longer term and less site specific, one of the things I like about this presentation and other presentations where we use that slide that shows the perspective from the drone footage aerial looking to the southeast, that's all developed under 30 years of plans. Those plans were master plans that were incorporated into the city's comprehensive plan, looking at balance all these different issues between providing housing, business and employment, services, environmental protection, schools, parks, all, and you can see all that in that particular perspective. And you can see all the trees that have been retained and incorporated in and around those sites. So it's not just a sea of asphalt, sea of buildings, and that's all there is with a few parking lot trees, that there are some strategies to, as development occurs, to make sure we're checking existing trees that we can, and as Grant said, replant those trees so that over time that canopy grows and matures again. And so I think that's a really good perspective to look at in terms of that context. And sometimes it doesn't, you see something, a site cleared and developed, and the tree replacement's not overnight, but that goes back to the kind of the three principles of planning that I always kind of use is patience, 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 because over time, that vision is going to be created and you're going to see that blend of both the environment and natural and built environments as we realize our community vision. And then in terms of the site-specific review, that's where our current planning team, Sarah, Reith, and Samra, they take all that information in and look at that site and work with our city contract foresters to figure out what can be saved on site and protected during development and what would have to be removed and replanted, and how to build those site plans so we can balance both types of opportunities, both the built and natural environments.
Well, those are good messages, and I keep getting a lot of constituent concerns about the trees up there, so this is helpful.
It is stark when you see something all of a sudden come down and you think that it'll never come back, but over time, and you look at some of our older neighborhoods, they were all cleared of trees as well. And then in the foreground of that aerial too, I forgot to mention, with the Home Depot complex, that wasn't necessarily treed, it was treed on the perimeter. And so people don't realize a lot that interior, there wasn't a significant amount of trees that were removed, and all those trees on the perimeter were substantially retained. And so there is that too, in the shock of new development occurring, and you see that, but you don't realize what was there before.
Right.
Yep.
So this is kind of a segue about the grocery store and stuff. How close do all of you work with Wesley about trying to engage, for instance, getting a grocery store in there when developers are trying to come up with ways to incorporate retail and stuff? I'm just curious.
Very closely, because he's an integral part of the team as we do our planning and economic development activities, because they're all kind of hand in hand and have to complement each other. And so a lot of times we're always trying to get the message out there of the need for grocery type services out north of the freeway. The challenge is property owners, and then the market for groceries is very has slim margins, and so there's not a lot of groceries services or providers or companies that are looking to expand in this market yet, because they're still trying to reconcile from the pandemic times, online sales, all these different pieces go together. And so we're constantly putting that message out there of the need, and it's just a matter of the right type of development to occur. Seeing some activity is encouraging, because I think that will also attract that there is opportunity to build these type of smaller scale groceries. And that's what's important about like the pickleball complex, getting some of that development occur. And I think you'll see some more interest at some point in time for some type of small scale grocery provider, whether it's a more of a regional or national chain or a local market, like I say, a Spud's market. Something will happen at some point.
Okay.
And I just tag on as well that, yes, we work closely with Wesley on that kind of stuff, but once somebody walks through the door with an application, we have to review that on its own for that spot. So
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not obvious to everyone all the time.
Well, this was very interesting. I'm glad we had the presentation.
Very much so, and I hope we can make this a regular thing. I don't know what interval you think is appropriate, maybe once a year or.
Well, maybe because that's one of the feedback I'd like to get from the council committee too, is the type of information that was presented, because we're trying to retool the information so we get more information to the council and the council committees. And so we can do this presentation on a twice a year basis, because if we do it quarterly, it might be too soon for any activity to change much. But we could do updates, and then the type of information, is this the type of information that you like to see or know about, that we can always make sure we get the right content for you.
Lenny?
Yeah, I think this was great information. I think twice a year would be awesome.
Yeah, I thought, I agree. And if you're up for twice a year, that's great. I was thinking we'd be lucky to get once a year.
It would be good if you take, you really clarify what probably will go to the hearing examiner and what isn't, just so that we'll say, oops, we can't talk about such and such, that's all. But I do want to know about it, so, well, I won't be on council, so what the heck?
That's important, because we want to make sure it's not caught off guard by community inquiries, but also be aware of what the limitations are you have in talking about a particular project. And again, we're going to probably be having some more conversations about that council hearing examiner quasi judicial process role continue, because I know we had several conversations in the past, but that's something that's going to continually come up, especially on controversial projects. The other piece of it too is we're going to need to update our contract with the hearing examiner ordinance, and that we're going to probably, it would be a natural spot to have that conversation again, just to make sure that we're making protecting the council, the city, and the whole land use process integrity, and to continue to have that conversation.
Righty. Anybody have another question, comment? You ready to go home? All right. Well, unless I hear an objection, I'll call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.